I want you to picture a living room. Like it's the very first evening in a new home, and right in the middle of the floor stands an Afghan hound puppy.
Oh, yeah. Just taking it all in.
Exactly, just scanning the room. But here's the thing. This isn't the composed, elegant, dignified dog you might be picturing when you hear the word Afghan.
Right. Definitely not. What you're actually looking at is something profoundly, almost beautifully awkward.
It really is. It's this gangly, sort of narrow-faced creature, and it has these impossibly long legs that honestly look like they were borrowed from a slightly larger dog.
Yeah, and the paws. The oversized, clumsy paws.
Yes. So the puppy is just standing there, pausing, studying the room like it's, meticulously cataloging every single detail. And then it just absolutely erupts across the hardwood floor.
With just a total, absolute absence of body awareness.
Zero awareness. I mean, there's a wild skid, a really frantic recovery, a profoundly startled look on its face, and then boom, it just goes right back to sniffing the corner of the couch like nothing even happened.
It's just a perfectly chaotic image. But, it really highlights the reality of what you're dealing with. The future elite athlete is actually already in there.
Right.
That visual sharpness, the sudden explosive acceleration, it's all present in this very early raw form.
So what does this all mean? That is the mission of today's deep dive. We are unpacking the incredible tension between this goofy, skidding puppy phase and the ancient blueprint of the adult sighthound it's destined to become.
Because the speed, the fierce independence, the visual awareness, all of that ancient blueprint is just baked right into their DNA.
Right, it's all in there.
But right now, that puppy completely lacks the strength, the physical coordination, and, well, the emotional steadiness of the adult dog.
Yeah.
The entire goal of raising them is guiding that blueprint through their physical and emotional development without, rushing the body or overwhelming the mind.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the physical side. Because to understand how that gangly little creature becomes an elegant adult, we first have to look at the underlying architecture, right?
Absolutely. We're talking about the pacing of their growth.
Right. And I know this is where a lot of new owners start to just panic because they look at this 8-week-old puppy, which is basically, all legs and ribs, and they immediately think they are failing as a dog parent.
Yeah, they think the puppy looks underfed.
Totally.
It is an incredibly common anxiety. It really is.
Yeah.
Afghan hounds are naturally lean, aerodynamic animals. So during their growth spurts, that leanness can be, well, really dramatic.
You literally see their ribs.
You will see ribs. You will see hip bones.
Yeah.
But the crucial biological reality here is that pushing a sighthound to grow faster or to bulk up is actively dangerous to their skeletal development.
Wait, okay, I have to push back on this on behalf of anyone listening who has ever raised a puppy.
Sure.
If my puppy looks genuinely skinny, how do I fight the deep-seated parental instinct to just feed it more and bulk it up? It feels totally unnatural to let a baby animal stay skinny.
I get that.
Yeah.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to think about the physics of what you're actually doing if you force rapid weight gain.
Okay.
A sighthound's frame is designed by evolution to be extremely lightweight. When they are puppies, their bones are essentially still lengthening.
Right, they're still growing.
Exactly. And their growth plates, those areas of cartilage at the ends of the long bones, they are soft and actively forming. If you add heavy artificial bulk to that frame, you are putting a massive unearned load on soft cartilage.
Oh man, it's like trying to build a skyscraper, but instead of just pouring concrete too fast, you're building a massive skyscraper on a fault line.
That's a great way to look at it.
Because the joints aren't just bearing static weight, right? They're constantly absorbing the shock of those sudden explosive zoomies we just talked about. If the framework isn't cured, the whole structure is basically compromised.
I'd take that fault line analogy even further, actually. This specific breed's entirely light frame is built for one biological purpose, which is explosive double suspension speed.
Wow.
To achieve that safely, the skeleton simply has to harden and fuse over an extended period. You cannot accelerate that process just to soothe your own anxiety about having a skinny dog.
You're just asking for trouble.
Exactly. You drastically increase the risk of lifelong joint anomalies. Body condition like muscle tone, energy, a healthy coat, all of that matters so much more than some heavy number on a scale.
Which means, I'm assuming, relying on your vet's objective assessment of their body condition is infinitely safer than just guessing because you think the dog looks a little too narrow.
Oh, 100%. A lean, well-muscled puppy growing at a steady, measured pace is in a vastly superior position to one that's being pushed toward a heavier weight. The skeleton simply must lead the way.
But, okay, if the skeleton is that soft and vulnerable, how do you handle their energy? Because, I mean, you have a dog that is literally bred for speed.
Right.
The logical leap for any owner is going to be, great, I bought a running dog, let's get this puppy out to the park and get it running to burn off the crazy.
And that is actually the fastest way to injure a growing sighthound.
Okay, let's unpack this because it's a complete paradox. You have a fast dog, but you aren't supposed to let it run.
Well, a growing sighthound puppy does not need forced running. They do not need repetitive jumping. They don't need long, structured mileage on pavement. They shouldn't be doing stairs. And they definitely shouldn't be making hard, fast turns on slick floors.
Wow, so no stairs either.
Right, because their ligaments and tendons simply do not have the tensile strength yet to handle a full adult-style sprint. That kind of running involves their entire spine flexing and extending in the air.
Okay, but if I can't run this dog and they are just bursting with energy, I feel like my only option is to just let them loose in the backyard and pray they don't break something. How do you bleed off that energy safely?
By encouraging free, self-directed movement.
Self-directed. Okay.
Yeah, that means just puttering around in a yard, exploring at a walk. It means the puppy choosing to sprint 15 feet because, I don't know, a leaf blew across the grass, and then stopping entirely on its own terms.
The key being on its own terms. So it starts and stops when its own developing brain and body say enough, rather than me dragging it along on a 3-mile jog.
Exactly. Self-directed movement supports their coordination without loading a vulnerable joint with repetitive stress. The puppy's own fatigue will naturally limit the impact.
And this actually explains something super practical for the home environment, too. You mentioned slick floors earlier. That skidding puppy from our living room example, that's not just a cute, funny moment for Instagram, is it?
Not at all.
Putting down non-slip flooring or rugs in the areas where the puppy spends most of its time, that isn't just an aesthetic choice.
No, it is a critical structural support system. When you combine their instinct for sudden acceleration with their, well, total lack of early body awareness, a slippery hardwood floor is basically an ice rink for fragile joints.
Oh, that sounds so dangerous.
It is. You have to manufacture traction for them to protect those joints from their own enthusiasm.
So, if the body is this fragile but the engine desperately wants to go, what is happening in the cockpit? Because that physical awkwardness is perfectly mirrored by a rapidly developing, highly independent brain.
Oh, absolutely.
And the sighthound brain, it shows up shockingly early, doesn't it?
It really does. Owners will constantly tell stories about their puppy being an absolute genius with perfect recall in the kitchen. But the second they step into a park and there's like a bird or a squirrel in the distance, the owner suddenly ceases to exist.
Yeah, and if you're out there with your puppy and they just freeze to stare at a squirrel while completely ignoring you, your immediate reflex is going to be frustration.
Of course.
You're going to label that as defiance or think the dog is just being incredibly stubborn.
But it's not defiance. It's the biological sighthound blueprint overriding your commands in real time. We have to look at the anatomy of their eyes here.
Oh, really? It's anatomical.
Yeah. Sighthounds have something called a visual streak. It's a high concentration of ganglion cells aligned horizontally across their retina. They are neurologically hardwired to detect motion on the horizon at distances that we can't even fathom.
That is wild. It's like an autonomous driving system or something.
Yeah.
Once those advanced sensors lock onto a fast-moving target, the system temporarily locks out the manual override.
Exactly.
Which, in this case, is your voice, just to ensure the pursuit isn't interrupted. Like trying to offer a kid a piece of broccoli while their favorite action movie is playing on an IMAX screen right behind you.
That is the exact mechanism. In that specific moment, watching a bird fly across a field is biologically far more rewarding than any piece of cheese you could possibly offer them. You are fighting biology, not stubbornness.
Wow. Okay.
And this brings up a crucial, absolutely non-negotiable warning for anyone raising this breed. You can never, ever treat a good response in a controlled environment as proof that the dog is safe off-leash in an open space near traffic.
Right, because the kitchen doesn't trigger that visual streak.
Exactly. There are no birds flying across your kitchen, and if the worst happens and the puppy does escape out the front door or slips a leash, there is one golden rule: do not chase them.
Which completely goes against every human panic instinct.
I know.
Your dog runs away, you run after it to save it. Why is that the wrong move?
Because to a sighthound, movement triggers pursuit. If you run toward them or after them, you have just engaged that same predatory hardwiring, but now you've turned their escape into an incredibly fun game of chase.
Oh, no. That is terrifying.
It is. The safest thing you can actually do is fall down, make a weird noise, or run in the opposite direction to try and trigger their visual streak to lock onto you.
So instead of risking the chase, you really have to focus on foundational training so they don't bolt in the first place. But how do you even train a dog whose brain is literally wired to watch the horizon instead of your face?
By understanding that harsh corrections do absolutely nothing for this breed. If they ignore you, it's not spite. It is simply competing motivation.
Competing motivation, I like that.
Right. So you keep training sessions very short, and you focus entirely on foundational cooperative skills. Things like brief eye contact, following a hand target, yielding to gentle leash pressure instead of fighting it.
Just keeping it super basic.
Yeah, waiting a single beat at a doorway before crossing the threshold. These tiny things build a cooperative relationship that this independent breed actually respects.
Well, if their brains are working that hard just to process a bird flying by and you're adding this foundational training on top of it, the mental tax on their CPU must be completely exhausting.
It takes a massive toll on their nervous system, it really does. And this is an area where standard puppy advice can really backfire.
How so?
Well, the general rule of thumb people always hear is expose your puppy to absolutely everything.
Yep.
Take it to the dog park, let the neighborhood kids pet them, just everywhere.
Flooding them with experiences.
Exactly. And for a retriever, that might be fine. But Afghan hounds are exceptionally observant, highly sensitive animals. They were bred to be hyper-aware hunters in vast, quiet landscapes.
Not a noisy city.
Right. If you fled a puppy like that, with chaotic dog parks or swarms of loud children in a modern city, you aren't socializing them. You are overwhelming their sensory processing. You're actively undermining their confidence.
So what does good socialization actually look like then for a dog that is biologically hyper-aware?
It looks like calm, controlled exposure from a safe distance. It's, watching children play from 50 feet away rather than being trapped in the middle of a crowded playground.
Okay, that makes sense.
And if the puppy shows fear, like if you see them freeze, back away, or tuck their tail, the absolute worst thing you can do is drag them toward the scary thing to just show them it's okay.
Oh, I see people do that all the time. But you're saying you create distance instead.
Yes, immediately.
Let them observe from a zone where they feel secure and just let their confidence build at its own pace.
Exactly. A puppy that learns the world is manageable rather than something they are just forced to endure, becomes a much more emotionally stable adult.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because this sensory sensitivity ties directly into how they sleep. And man, the massive misconception out there is that a tired puppy is automatically a well-behaved puppy.
Oh, it's such a dangerous myth.
Right. People think, oh, my dog is acting crazy. They're biting everything. I just need to exercise it more to wear it out.
But with a highly sensitive nervous system, adding more stimulation is a recipe for total disaster. Puppies, especially this breed, need massive amounts of sleep to process all that visual and mental data.
So what happens when they don't get it?
Well, when they get overtired, they don't just quietly nod off in the corner.
No, they turn into little gremlins.
They really do. An overtired sighthound puppy becomes frantic. They get super mouthy, they can't settle down, they seem almost electrically wired. Overtiring a young nervous system just backfires completely.
It's totally counterproductive.
Yeah. Managing this breed well means recognizing that sometimes when they're acting their absolute worst, they don't need another walk. They desperately need a forced nap in a quiet room.
So if they need all this downtime and we can't run them to exhaustion, how do you actively bond with them? Because establishing a daily rhythm naturally leads us into something that provides, handling and structure without physical strain.
Yes.
We really have to talk about grooming.
Oh, grooming is huge. The mistake people make is looking at their gangly, short-coated puppy and thinking, well, the long-flowing adult Afghan coat won't be here for another year, so I really don't need to worry about serious grooming yet.
But you absolutely cannot wait for the coat to arrive.
No, you can't. If you wait until that demanding adult coat comes in, you are now trying to teach a fully grown, strong, highly opinionated sighthound to tolerate hours of completely foreign physical handling.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It is. You have to build the tolerance right now while they're small and pliable. You bring out the brushes, you handle their paws, you check inside their ears, you maybe just turn on the blow dryer so they hear the noise.
It's not actually about detangling hair yet, then. It's just about normalizing the environment and the physical handling, just making it a low-stakes routine.
Precisely. And there's a vital secondary benefit to this, too. Daily grooming is actually a built-in health scan disguised as maintenance.
Oh, I love that. A built-in health scan.
Yeah. Their hands are literally all over the dog's body. It's how you find, a small friction mat forming behind the ears, or early skin irritation, or a swollen joint, long before it becomes a massive medical problem.
And that physical handling links directly into the broader medical care needed to protect this dog's future, which really brings us to the health partnerships you need to form.
It's so important.
And this is where generic dog owner advice really falls short for sighthounds, right?
Yes, standard vet advice doesn't always apply here. Because you are tracking their growth so carefully, your vet really needs to understand sighthound-specific biology. For example, we know clumsiness is totally normal for an Afghan puppy. But persistent limping, reluctance to move, or repeated crying during activity, those are not wait-and-see situations. They can indicate severe joint anomalies.
And what about anesthesia? Because I know that's a terrifying topic for a lot of sighthound owners.
It is incredibly specific to these breeds. Because they have such low body fat, their bodies do not absorb and process fat-soluble anesthetic drugs the way a Labrador does, for instance.
Okay, that makes sense.
Their livers process things differently, too.
Yeah.
A vet who isn't experienced with sighthound protocols can very easily overdose them on standard medications.
Wow, you really need a specialist, or at least a vet who listens. And what about spaying and neutering? Because people always want a hard and fast rule for that, like do it at 6 months or wait until they're 2.
Yeah, there is no single number, especially for a large, slow-growing breed. Hormones play a direct role in when those growth plates we talked about actually close.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so removing those hormones too early can cause the long bones to continue growing longer than they should, which alters the dog's entire structural geometry. The timing of spaying or neutering must be a really nuanced conversation with a vet who understands sighthound skeletal development.
Okay, I want to clarify one final massive myth before we wrap up. And this is something you hear all the time with large, fast breeds.
Oh, I bet I know what it is.
People say, oh, I have a huge 2-acre securely fenced yard. That's all the dog needs. They'll be fine.
Right. Well, a securely fenced yard is a fantastic, necessary tool for safe, self-directed movement. But it is not a substitute for actually raising the dog.
Yes. You can't just open the back door, let the dog out, and assume the acreage is doing the work of ownership for you.
Exactly.
A yard does not replace foundational training.
Yeah.
It doesn't replace the grooming handling. And most importantly, it does not replace actual intentional partnership with the owner.
Development is essentially a triad. It is the raw genetics laid down by the breeder, it is the daily intentional choices made by the owner, and it is the highly specific medical guidance of a veterinarian. All three have to work together.
So let's bring this all the way back to that image we started with, the living room. The skidding, gangly, oversized pod puppy recovering from a total wipeout on your newly installed traction rugs.
Such a great image.
Every single thing we've discussed today, the careful self-directed exercise, distant socialization, the patient foundational training, the early tactile grooming routines, the highly specific veterinary care.
Yeah.
Every single one of these choices is fundamentally about protecting the blueprint of the animal that puppy is destined to become.
You are actively holding the space for them to grow into their ancient design safely.
It is an incredible journey, and it leaves you with a lingering, almost philosophical question to ponder long after this deep dive ends. Think about it. We are taking an ancient breed, an animal literally designed by thousands of years of evolution to think entirely independently, to visually lock onto prey across the horizon, and to sprint at blistering speeds across rugged desert terrain without any human direction.
Yes.
And we are bringing that animal into our modern, tightly controlled, hardwood-floored living rooms. So when you feel frustrated raising them, when they won't come back at the park, or when they stare at a bird instead of listening to you, how much of your frustration is just you fighting thousands of years of evolution?
That's the real question.
Are we unfairly asking them to change their very biological nature to fit our modern lives? Or is the real journey here about changing our own expectations of what a good dog is actually supposed to be?